Hello everyone. It's been a couple of months since we recorded our last episode out of Austin, Texas.
Yes.
It was really good. I think both of us were wearing cowboy hats. If you missed that, you can look it up. We are in the Bay Area today, and partially this is my fault because I changed jobs and that distracted me from recording a video. And also it made us reflect on our journey for the last year or so, both professionally but also in everyday life. How is AI changing our work, our life, what we're using it for? So while this is not a how-to kind of environment, we thought, why don't we talk about how the two of us are using AI every day?
I think that really drove the point home that instead of talking about trends and what's happening, let's talk about how we actually use it, how we see our teams using day to day to get from just experimentation to real productivity. I mean, I was very grateful. We wrapped up a couple of weeks ago our first AI innovation tournament. We had like more than 200 teams submitting amazing ideas. But at the end of the day, when we done selected for the top 10, the key criteria was what really moves the needle in the next 3 to 6 months. And that really made me reflect, what is it I'm using daily?
You know, it's, I mean, the title of this channel is Digital Value Creation, and we keep thinking about, are we creating value with AI every day? And I'm asking myself, like, I like playing with a lot of different tools, but is it really making me more productive? So it's a fair question, and I think it happens at work. I mean, there's only so much we can talk about the companies we work for and the internal projects, but I think it would be good to highlight both ends of the spectrum. And so we'll start with, you know, we were in the car for hours because that's how you get around in the Bay Area, and we noticed, my brother and I actually use GPT very differently. And I'm just going to use GPT. We use Claude, Gemini, different tools. But
and maybe at this point, a quick disclaimer. However you use these tools, make sure it's in compliance with your company policy. So if your company endorses a special environment, like only allows Copilot, use that. I mean, most of these tools develop very rapidly. So we might use some of these names interchangeably. In some cases, some has advantages, but it tends to be very short-lived. So let's make sure that you are aware of what information you submit. Make sure that you understand what is the policy, what is the guardrails that these tools have to protect your information.
Sounds like a medical or legal disclaimer, but it's important. Like most, if you work in a corporate environment, you go through these conversations with your companies. We go through this internally. There are contractual protections for the data you upload that may be business related. There are technical constraints depending on the environment. So you could be an encrypted environment, so that could be even better protected. And sometimes there are no protections. You just have to make sure that you're doing the smart thing. So we use examples that are universally applied, and you have to use that filter. So enough said about that. So one of the things let's start with how we interface. So I tend to type. My brother tends to talk because he drives more, and he lives in San Diego. I live in Philly. My commute is 5 minutes because I go from one room to another in remote work.
Mine is 45 minutes sometimes 20. So I find the voice interface developed tremendously in the last 6 months, depending on what tool you use, and find it super effective.
In fact, I started with Pi, which Inflection AI, but now GPT's voice interface is pretty good. So one of the things that I learned over the last years, and wondering what you guys found, is I think there are so many specs, and we'll talk about how we use the tools for, but I think you can provide, we all started with prompt engineering. We got smarter, what kind of prompts we're giving, again, GPT as a general catch-all term. Now we're getting to a phase where you actually provide content with it. It's embedding in a business environment, could be RAGs, but the idea is that you can actually provide context saying this is all. This is primarily what I want you to talk about. So we'll touch on embedding as a broad term, and for those that are not technical, it just means that if you say, I want you to research a topic, and you say, I really want you to look at these 10 documents as a source, you get better results, more pointed results around what you need. And it's also true in a business environment. Again, if it's with the proper protection, you can provide your business data, and the answers coming back from your favorite tool will be a lot more pointed, a lot more relevant. But I'll start with what I use every day. So every single day, my number one application on my iPhone is Perplexity. And we're speaking early November in 24, and ChatGPT just came up with their search, so this may shift my view. But Perplexity has, that became my search. I don't Google search anymore, although now they have an AI view, maybe it will come back to that. But for complex searches, when I want to research a topic this broadly, and I want this to be factual without hallucinations, Perplexity has served me well. So that's where I go and saying, I'm trying to think of something. I start with Perplexity, and sometimes I take the output of Perplexity. This is the topics, this is research reference, and I put it into GPT and expand on it. But it's already providing some basic constraints on the topic. So I don't know what you do every day.
So it's very, very, very similar in a way that what I find the most useful personally for these tools is when I either need to go deeper into a new topic, want to catch up with something, or want to generate options. And the sequence is somewhat similar, that use, whether it's Google's extended search, but again, they somewhat limit the Gen AI capability because it costs them a lot more compute. So start with something like Perplexity. What I tend to use when it's not company content is I try to use these tools as competitor. So I'm looking at Claude, looking at Gemini, looking at GPT, because each of them has a slightly different system level prompt. Based on that, they respond, they approach things differently. Especially with GPT-01 release, you see a lot deeper analysis. And each of these tools in the last couple of months extended their context space significantly. So what Thomas just said, you have a lot more ability to provide a lot more context, even documents. So you can start to make sense of information you bring to the table. So it's not about coming something back from generic content, but helping you to focus your research or your ideation or your option creation to something you provide. One of the best use cases, I use it when I already have an idea what I want to communicate, and I want to adapt the message to different audiences. I mean, especially in corporate environment, sometimes we need to have something for users or peers, sometimes different functions. And I find it super effective with a little bit of prompting. If I provide some information and ask a question, how would that resonate well with this type of user group?
I like this. So we all work in cross-functional environment at work, and I'm sure you notice, like, why don't they get what I'm saying? And there could be different groups, different departments. So for those of you in a professional subscription of a ChatGPT, you can create your custom GPT, and many of you guys do. I created personas. So I have a chief marketing officer, a chief financial officer, a chief information officer, an accountant, an Excel tutor. So, and I can I can articulate my message, I can test it. How would I tell this story to a CMO? And if I use a custom GPT, that's a CMO, a chief marketing officer, then that's the persona. It's prompted to have that persona, and it is really interesting, insightful, saying, I don't understand the jargon you're using, or I would recommend rephrasing it. And you can create these prompts, and there are many resources on the web to find examples. So it could be somewhat adversarial, saying, I don't get what you're saying. You need to rephrase it for me, and this is how I would. So there are many tactics to do this well, and I think it's really insightful because it helps with communication, which is a primary skill we all have. And
just to build on that, my son recently changed professions, and he wanted to go deeper into a financial advisory market. And I helped him to set up custom GPTs. So both in his test preparation to have something quizzing him, but also how to interact, how to present information for an upcoming interview. So let's say you have an interview ahead. or a key business presentation for a CFO. It's very easy to define those personas. Now, what if you don't have a GPT subscription or your company discourages you? I mean, in our company, we use, for example, Copilot. Not a problem. You can actually just prompt the Copilot to act that personality. So customizing the message for different audience, I find it super useful and I use it daily.
By the way, we may want to touch on budgeting. So, we mentioned a bunch of tools we use. Yes, you're going to pay pretty much $20 on everything you use. So very soon your AI subscription will exceed your cable and streaming video subscription. So those are individual decisions, I recognize this, but this is the age we live in. So if you're dabbling into AI, and if you're watching this, you are, you already know this. So we're not making light of it. It's just a fact of life that compute is expensive, and we're all chipping in for those costs. But there are we have a really interesting example. So our parents live in Hungary, and many years ago, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, they wrote a novel, a family novel, which is our family's history. And unlucky for all of you, this was written in Hungarian. and my brother took on the project with GPT and a couple of other tools to make it accessible to our own children, but also future generations that don't speak Hungarian. So you want to talk about it?
Thank you. It's a great example. And by the way, as I mentioned, in this case, I use multiple tools because I maxed out very quickly my quota in these tools. And also I noticed that the tone and the style was lost depending on whether I use Claude or Gemini. So I ended up selecting a tool and then help it translate from Hungarian to English, but maintaining the tone. But then I realized that's great work, but our kids don't like to read. So my next step was going to 11 Labs. And first, I actually made the effort to digitize my parents' voice so I could create it in their own voice. The problem is they have an even thicker Hungarian accent than me. So I realized I created an unlistenable, very authentic voice. So I just picked a fantastic, engaging voice and was able to create an audiobook in about 3 hours.
And what's amazing, so the reason we're talking about this example, it's very personal to us, but it's also very practical. So imagine how you would have done this. Now you have a grandparents, book or story or journal, and how would you make it accessible for somebody? Let's say your grandparents are Germans or Russians or Chinese, and this is really interesting. This is productivity, but this is also legacy in a way. So it's those are pretty inspiring.
And
stuff.
Just on that note, maybe you don't have to deal with a family legacy, but you have training materials, or you have something that you have a hard time to engage a part of your global team. I mean, I find the same thing that we usually don't always translate training content effectively or quickly. So this was my aha moment that, wow, this was helpful, but I could do that for any time I need to communicate with a diverse audience.
So speaking of communication, obviously it's a big use case for generative AI. One of the things I do a lot is the proverbial rephrase it as if you're talking to a fifth grader, not to the fifth grade level, but you want to have you want to make sure that what you're communicating actually makes sense to different audiences, and obviously GPT or other Gen AI tools are amazing at this. So it helps you rephrase it, but beyond that, like really think about the audience, and if my audience and this is the environment I'm communicating, you rephrase it. It happens in email. So not just write an email for me and it's sort of out of context and it has bullet points in it and numbers, which is not how you would communicate. You describe the audience and let this be thoughtful. And especially the latest edition with 1.0, GPT 1.0,
same thing.
01, I'm sorry. 01 you could actually, it will think through that process if you prompt it saying this is the audience, this is what I'm dealing with, and it can follow a logic to develop a thoughtful way of communicating to a different audience. So experiment with it. This is always useful for me, and I always use a contextual persona-based communication in writing or for presentations.
And just on that note, what I also find it super useful is sometimes you need to make an argument, whether it's in an email, whether it's in a presentation, and you know that there's some prevailing wisdom. Let's say there's an analyst research that has been published in this topic, where you sometimes partially agree, partially disagree. I find it very helpful just even upload that single document and ask a question, what part of that research conflicts with my opinion, and what part of the research reinforces that? I use that a lot of time when I have a single document I know is well understood in our company and want to either build on it, or if I disagree with it, at least recognize that there's an opinion.
This is a low blow for me because he knows I love document processing. So my job, not that important what I do all day, but it involves a lot of documents. I read a lot. I have to process a lot of diverse views, one of the tools, there's no endorsement, we don't get paid for sure.
There's no affiliate link.
it's docAnalyzer, and there are many other tools that allow you to, if you have to deal with a lot of different documents, this is one I use, is I can literally upload hundreds of documents, and the maximum I've done is about 80 in a topic. And the same way you can have a conversation with an individual document, you can have a conversation with 80 of them. Imagine, so you're getting diversity. I do a lot of research, technology research, business research, market research, and you can say, this is what I'm thinking, this is my hypothesis, and you run it by it, and it's really interesting. It's like having an audience of experts, and you say, well, what you're thinking about is right, but some analysts say this, and some other analysts say this, and you get in this rich environment. I have no idea how you could do this without going for 6 months back to school in a very rapid period of time. So again, remember, think of the documents you're uploading, but these are primarily public research information, or you could, a website or web research. It's amazing what you can learn. And speaking of learning, I mean, one of the things like fast learning, how do you get up to speed? The world is changing, so I know this is a big topic for you.
I mean, for me, one of the things is I used to use Duolingo in the past, even just to practice Spanish. Part of my family is bilingual. And I find these days that I can just use ChatGPT while I'm driving and have, whether I created a custom personality or just use the regular one, and can have a discussion when I ask, her, because I have to have a female voice, to act like as my Spanish teacher and have a conversation with me, correct mistakes, suggest topics. So it's something that in the past I would have a Spanish tutor or whatever language you want to learn. So besides just learning any topic, I find it extremely helpful, not just for translation, but also language enrichment.
So some ideas. So some of these are probably not new to you. I think it's probably good that we bounce ideas around, saying how do you and what do you use it for every day. And again, going back to the focus of our channel, is I ask myself every day, is this making me more productive? Because distraction, there's only so much entertainment we can say. So many episodes ago we talked about how we can advance around AI and AI value creation. So I think a lot of things change in like half a year in terms of how I use the tools. I used to experiment. This is pretty cool. I can create a nice picture. I used to use Dolly all the time. I don't think I've been to Dolly in like months. So I think we all get better, and this is what the win is. And the tool, new tools come out every day. Arpad in the beginning mentioned that Apple came up with Apple Intelligence. We actually went to the Apple headquarters today, to the Apple store there, and said, tell us how we should be using Apple Intelligence. And they said, come back Wednesday. It's no joke. They said, Wednesday.
They said, we are rolling out this training in every Apple store. It's like, this is crazy. I mean, they waited 80 months before they launched it, and there's still no clear answer. But besides the point, for me, the key takeaway is, I think when we started this channel together, we started to talk about AI first challenge, that what if anything that crosses your desk, you want to challenge yourself to use AI. And I noticed myself that I'm doing it, like there's so many actions where my first reaction is, let me do it. My second is, hold on, I think I might be able to do it faster. And this is what we are challenging. I mean, these ideas we share today, not revolutionary, not new, for many of you is like, of course, that makes sense. But the question is, are you using it? Are you using it daily?
Yeah, let's use it daily. So we'll be back soon once we're off the road. We're actually meeting with a lot of we're talking to a lot of AI companies. My brother was talking to CIOs that are deploying AI. So we'll come back to the business topics in our next episodes, but we thought we'd do something different today. So thanks for listening.
Have a wonderful day, and more importantly, share in the comments how you use it daily. What are the areas that you find it useful, not just as something to play with, but that actually helps you every single day.
Cool. We may drop in some of our custom GPTs. Share yours. Thank you.
Thank you.